Welcome everyone. This is Ayad Boudiab and we are proceeding with our Angular course. As you have seen recently, we've talked about different options, including the custom directives and how we can work with them and how I can build them. I showed you some examples that we built step by step, and I also went through some examples that they were from the Angular website. But a few things are still not discussed, right? We don't know how we can work with the services. We don't know the purpose of the modules and how we can get some modules to be built together. So that's pretty much the discussion for today. And after I discuss that briefly with you, then I can move into creating services, because we have three different ways of creating services. We need to see the factory, the service, and the provider, so we know how we can create those services. So first things first, I want to show you what I have right now, and then we're going to move on and work with a service so we can see how we get that service going. And then the second thing is talking about the module. Okay, so first of all, when I'm working with these applications, you've seen me creating basically a module, right? In this case, custom directive app. And then we refer to that here in the ng app, and we say this is that's the module that I'm working with. On that module, I say I have no dependencies, and then I tag a controller to it, and then I tag a directive to it. Okay. Now this usually works well when you're working with small examples like we're doing in this course. But eventually, when you're creating bigger and bigger applications, you won't be having everything in one file, obviously. So you need to see how we can build these things in a bigger scale. So first of all, then, we have the module named custom directive app, and then I have a controller and I have a directive. How about if I need to move that directive to another file, right? And then how I can refer to it in my code. That's one thing we can do here. And the second thing is basically how I can build a different module and how we can use that in the example. Right now, you're looking at an example that we picked up from the website, and it builds our own directive called my current time that has the interval and the date filter. I already discussed that with you in a previous lesson. We went through the details of working with this directive and how I can have the link function with the scope element attributes, and how I can basically cancel the timeout and so on. And when I take this example and I try to load it, in Sublime, in here I can right click. There are a couple of things that I could do. Previously, I've always shown you that I can copy the file path and I can paste that in the browser of my choice, and then I can load it, right? Well, originally this one was not working on my machine, and I got it to work, so I can open in browser, right? That's the option that I want to show you today. Open in browser was not working. Copy file path, obviously it copied the path, and then I paste that in Chrome. But in this case, I get the open in browser to work. So now if I click on open in browser, it should load my default browser, and then it will show me the example that I'm working with. And as you can see, you've seen that before. It displays the date format, it displays the current time, and then as I manipulate the format, I see that the current time down here reflects the current time with the new format that I have specified. So then this is working. Let's go ahead and try to modify that to work with a directive that's living in another file. All right. So then I need a different file, and I need to move the directive over. That's the purpose of this example. I'm going to do File, New File. It opens me a new file here. And then I'm going to take the directive and move it over, right? Okay, I'm going to, for this case, I'm going to copy everything up to the module, and then go to the new file and paste it there. Now first thing first, I don't need the controller. I said I want to move the directive, so let's get that out of the way. I have a directive here, and it says angular.module custom directive app, and then dependency, and then directive. Now, one thing that you need to be aware of, and let's first, by the way, save the file. So save as, and let's move that. Let's call this one directive.js. in the current folder. All right, so now I have directive.js in the current folder. Move the function down here so we can see everything. All right, so this is the actual directive, right? I moved it over to a different file. But one thing that you need to be aware of is that that's not how you add a directive to the module, because after all, Angular need to know the module, and you need to know that you're tagging a directive to it. You used to do that here, which was fine, by saying Angular.module and then no dependency, and then you keep going. In here, the module should have been already defined. So what my point is, there's no dependency. So this is gone from there. You're saying Angular.module custom directive app. Angular should have seen that module before, and now you tell it when you get that module, tag the directive to it. Okay, so I'm adding a directive. Notice that I have not changed anything in the directive itself. It's just still the same way I had it in the previous file, but I said at the top in here Angular.module, the name of the module, custom directive coming from here, custom directive app, and then I say .add, remember no dependency, and then and then the directive name. Okay, so this is moving this one over here. I'm going to come back to this page and try to remove the directive. This one is no longer needed, right? This is gone from there. Control X will remove a line. So now I don't need that line there. I have Angular.module, the name of the module, no dependencies, .controller. That just wraps up. By the way, if you click on the element itself, it tells you the mapping closing. So right now see here that the bracket is underlined, and it's underlined over here as well. And then comes the square bracket. That's a square bracket. Comes the parenthesis. Here's the parenthesis for the controller. We follow that by a semicolon. We close the controller, and this controller is added to the module. So now I have a module with a controller. I have the directive living in another file. It's called directive.js. Obviously, I need that directive. Okay, so I need to add the directive here. Now the question is, where would I add it? Should I go here and add the directive, or should I go here and add the directive? My point is, should that be in the script before the module or in the script after the module? Remember, in the directive.js here, we said that we have Angular.module custom directive app dot directive. So I'm adding a directive to an existing module, right? So if I'm adding to an existing module, I have to come back here and add it after, because this is where the module is being defined, right? So it should have seen the module before adding the directive. So then that tells me that my script with source equal directive.js being here, should be /script and then closing. So now I have the script with the source equal directive.js and then /script to close this original script here. This is happening after the script for the module. Now it knows the module exists. It tags the directive to it. I need to remove this line here. Save, come back to this one, save, and then reload the page. Okay, my page is working as it was working before, because I didn't make any changes, right? I just simply moved the content of the directive to another file. So I'm not expecting anything in here as far as the UI or anything else is concerned. I just moved the directive to another page. Okay, so that's that. I was able to move it over to another place to service my my original page, right? So it's my original page right now is smaller, and I'm just referencing that directive, because after all, when I work with services, services are the part that provides me some functionality, and that functionality does not exist anywhere else in the model view controller, right? The model is the data, the view to display, The controller is the one that's taking the interaction to provide me with the information I need. So the service is a piece that lives somewhere else, not in the module, not in the view, not in the controller, but this is a functionality that I need. Specifically, this is the functionality that I can use across my application, right? So there are different places within my application that I need that service. So that's why I move that into, I create this, that's why I create that service basically, and be able to reuse that service in multiple multiple pieces within my application. Now, when I talk about module, the module is basically something that I can use across applications with an S. So I can create a specific module. I can make that module reusable in different parts of my in different applications, right? So it's like you're creating reusable components, right? That's what we're talking about. And we take these components and we use them in different applications. As far as the service is concerned, we're creating a specific piece of code that can be used multiple parts within the same application. Okay. And by the way, there are different functionalities that they're available for the module. For example, in here, when I say module dot controller, what I can say also that module dot animation to create some animation, module dot config to configure a module when it's loaded, module dot constant to define, of course, specific service that gets me some constant values, module dot factory and that provider. These are specifically to the services that I'm going to talk about. Module dot filter, because I can create my own filter. We've discussed filters before, right? So that's something I can use it for. So then what I'm trying to discuss here is that one service that I can use within the same application, and then I can create modules that I can use in different applications. So how can I create that separate module, right? If I go back to directive over here, I can see that I have a custom directive app, and then in that I added a directive, right? Now the second thing, if I need to create a module, then angular.module custom directives, let's change the name here. So I'm creating my own module called custom directives. And now, since I'm creating a module, I need to add the dependencies. Now the module does not depend on anything, but I need to add the brackets for dependencies. So I'm creating a separate module here named custom directives. And to that module, I'm tagging the directive. Okay, so now we are in a separate module, right, called custom directives. And that module, I can be using it in different applications. Now, the second thing is, how can the original page change to reflect what I just did? Let's go back to the original page. Now the original page says I have a module defined called custom directive app, and then followed by the directive. Well, this does not work anymore here, right? Because I will show you why. Angular.module custom directive app, and I have in here custom directives as another module. Let me copy this file. Now custom directive app depends on that module. You see the dependency now? One module depending on another. And that module is called custom directives, coming from the second file, right? And I have a dependency. Custom directive app depends on custom directives in order for it to do its work. All right. Now, I said this one doesn't work. Why? Well, if custom directive app depends on custom directive, it should have known where custom directive is. So I need to take this file that defines custom directives, cut it, and put it above over here. So now, and let me remove this line. So now I have the custom directives being defined, custom directive app referencing that module that already been defined. Now everything is good to go, right? Let's go ahead and save, and then open in browser. And something is different in here because it doesn't load anymore, right? So let's go back and figure out what's going on. Minimize the file, go back here. I think in here, custom directive 3 directive.js. I don't think I have saved that, right? So let's go ahead and save it. And now it's saved. The circle is not there anymore. Go back to the original file. Let's make sure this is closed, so we're not caching anything. Come back to the file, open in browser, and now it's working. So I just simply forgot to save the changes that I've made to the directive.js. So now, as you see, everything is working just fine. So what did we learn from this lesson? We learned that basically, as the application gets bigger and bigger, obviously I need to move things as separate files. When I move things to separate files, I can, for example, in this case, directives, I can basically reference them within here, right, by saying directive.js. That's one option that I need to make. And I need to put this directive here by adding to the module. Well, there are two different approaches to it. First of all, if you're still tagging to the same module, then you have directive.js down here because you need the module to be defined first. If you're creating your own module, then you move the directive.js to the top above the main module, so that way the main module know about its dependency before it encounters it. Okay, so this is important for us to understand. Now let me move to creating services. As I mentioned in the at the beginning of the discussion, that there are three different services: the factory, the service, and the provider that we can work with. So let's see how we can create those services. This is Ayad Boudiab. Thank you very much for listening, and you take care.